My name is Cort Brady, and I've spent the last 10 years building and scaling companies that now provide over 7 figures of passive income. My mission is to help you build a team that will run your business so that you can spend your time on those things that bring you the most energy. I'm going to take you through 4 different steps that are going to help you find the very best candidate. So step 1 is to get clear. I have people come to me all the time and say, hey, I have this buddy or my cousin reached out to me and I think I'm going to hire them. And I dig in a little bit and find out that they're not actually solving for a business problem, but they're solving for an emotion. Almost always we make decisions based on emotion, and then we try and justify those decisions to other people with logic. Make sure you're not doing that in hiring. The 2 biggest emotions I see that people are trying to fill when they're hiring others are loneliness and validation. It is lonely. It is hard to be the leader or the entrepreneur. No one else can carry that burden for you. So you think this person's going to come on and help shoulder that weight, but it's just going to be you at the end of the day. If you can't crack that, don't be an entrepreneur. I assure you that you can. It just takes some gumption. The second is validation. If you respect somebody and you think, man, they want to come on and work with me and be a part of my team, that must mean that I have something special. Then you'll make a foolish decision because you want that person to come over. You probably are terrific. You probably are great. You have to believe that about yourself, and you can't get that validation from somebody else. So just move forward knowing you can do this. Once you've decided, yeah, I'm actually not solving for an emotion, there is a need or a problem in the business or an opportunity that we want to capture, and this person is uniquely qualified to help us capture that, then you can move forward with building a scorecard. The scorecard is going to have 3 elements. The first is the mission of that role. The second is the defined outcomes. And the third is the competencies that must be had by that person. The mission statement gives you clarity to why you are hiring this person. It's the justification to the problem that you're solving or the opportunity that you hope to capture. A specific example of a mission that I use for a virtual assistant that I was hiring is the mission of this role is to free me up for an additional 4.5 hours each day so I can spend those 4.5 hours in a flow state and be present with my family when I'm not at work. That was really clear of this opportunity that I wanted to capture with this hire and allowed me to justify that hire to a business partner or to an advisor or mentor. After you've established the mission, you then define success metrics. Every person that you hire should bring you a minimum of 4 to 8 times more profit than what you end up paying them. These success metrics ensure that that happens. When you're an entrepreneur or you're a leader, you're going to think that your person coming on is just going to figure it out. They're going to do the same things you did to get to this point. If that were true, they would not be applying for a job and working for you. They would be starting their own company or their own business. But because they're applying for you, they think differently, which means that they need some guidelines on here's what's expected and here's how you're going to accomplish it. This is best written by going through each metric and saying, we're going to take this metric from its current state at X to a future state of Y in this amount of time. As a specific example, if you're hiring a marketing manager and your inbound demo requests are currently at 20 per month, you might say, we want to take our inbound demo requests from 20 to 50 in the next 6 months. That's what success looks like. And as an aside to this, for all of those that are hearing that employees should make the employers 4 to 8 times more than they're getting paid and want to go start their own business, they should go start their own business. They just have to make sure that they can handle the stress and the risk and that they can survive for enough time before money starts coming in. For most entrepreneurs, that time is usually 3 to 5 years before the business is actually profitable. It took me 6 years of making less as a business owner than I was making in my job prior. It wasn't until year 7 that I surpassed that. And that's why it's so important that you have such a high margin on your return on employee spend, because you'll risk so much and it will be so long before you'll actually get paid back. After you have your mission and your success metrics, you then need to dig into competencies. This is what's going to separate your gut feel from actually data-backed hiring. And this is why you make so many mishires. If a mishire is made, it's almost always able to be tracked back to a lack of competency testing. So you'll list out all of the skills that are going to be needed for that role. Are there technical skills? Are there software skills? Are there interpersonal skills within the company? Do they need to be able to manage? Are there interpersonal skills outside of the company? Do they need to be able to deal with customers well? You need to write those down, and then in the interview process, you'll cross-check against all of those competencies and make sure that that person has that skill set. Once you've defined the mission, the metrics that you're gauging that person against, and the competencies, you are then crystal clear on the person that you're needing to hire, and you can move on to the next step. Do not move on until you are crystal clear on the problem that you're solving and the person that's going to solve that problem for you. Step 2 is a resume review. We'll go through this extremely quickly, and it's going to allow you to only take 7 seconds to make a go or no-go decision with every resume that you see. The only 3 things that I look at on a resume are typos, length of time at a job, and competencies. If someone sends me a resume with a single typo, I just discard it. If they didn't put the work into giving you a perfect resume, they're not the right fit. Next is the length of time at a job. If somebody has had multiple jobs for less than 6 months, you do not want to hire that person. They're going to work with you until they're trained, and then they're going to find another job. It's going to be a waste of time. Third is the competencies. If you need a software developer with 3 years of experience in a certain tool, make sure they have that experience. Don't hire them hoping that they're going to develop that skill set. You'll just be paying for that education for them. That's it. After you looked at typos, length of time at each job, and competencies, you can then move on from the resume stage to the video interview asynchronous process. In almost every interview that I conducted, in the first 3 minutes, I knew whether I was going to hire that person or not. And then I spent the next 45 minutes justifying that decision that I had made in the first 3 minutes. The asynchronous video allows you to get that gut feeling without then wasting the next 45 minutes on a candidate that you know that you're not going to hire. I send the same email template to every candidate with just a few inputs altered. This is what it says. Thank you for applying. We're interested in getting to know you better. I wanted to let you know once more that we're hiring for either part-time or full-time, in-office, hybrid, or remote, and that the pay for this position will be X with the following benefits. Before we move into an interview, please take 3 minutes to record and send me a video answering these 3 questions. First, what experience do you have that would make you a great fit for this job? Second, what is it about you that would make you our top candidate? And third, where do you hope your career takes you in the next 3 years? This accomplishes 3 things. First, only serious candidates are going to take the time to make you a video. So again, filters out those people who may not be great fits. Second, you're giving them additional details. When I very first started hiring, I would get a resume, call them up, we'd set up an interview, I'd be stoked on them. I'd get all the way to the end of the interview process and find out that they wanted part-time when this is a full-time position, or they can only work remote and I need them in office, or they need some health benefit that we don't provide. If you send all those up front, you're going to filter out those candidates who aren't a fit. The second thing that this does is it lets you know if this is somebody that you want to work with. The biggest perk of being a leader or a manager or a business owner is that you get to choose all of your coworkers. If you get 2 minutes into this 3-minute video and you can't stand the person that you're hearing or seeing, that's amazing information. You don't have to hire that person. And the third benefit to the asynchronous video is that you can watch it at your own time. You don't have to cancel meetings. You have 3 minutes in between your meetings where you can watch these videos and then respond to the candidates. Once you've gone through those first 3 steps, you've gotten tons of clarity on who you want to hire. You're sure they're solving a problem, not an emotion. You've built a scorecard out, and then you've reviewed their resume, looking for the length of time that they've been at each job, looking at any typos and looking for the competencies. And then you've done a video screening asynchronously. You're ready to go into the actual interview. About 3 years into my business, we brought on Bank of America as a client, and they brought with them a ton of volume. And so I had to hire a ton of people. And over 6 months, we either lost or fired every single one of those people. This interview process that I'm going to take you through is what we instituted after losing all those people. It took us from hiring the wrong person 50% of the time to hiring the right person 92% of the time. People have made hiring this extremely complex process, but you're only actually looking for 2 things. 1, are they a core values fit? And 2, do they have a history of high performance? If you can find somebody that is a hell yeah on both of those things, then you'll make the right hire. These questions that we're going to go through is going to give you all the data that you need to know if they check both of those boxes. The reason that you have to check both of those 2 boxes is because if you only check one or the other, then you're going to have a super high performer that's dishonest and people hate working with. You don't want that in your business, or you're going to have this honest hype dude that everyone loves but doesn't pull their own weight. You can't have that either. So high performer and embodies your core values. Before you jump into the interview, make sure you have a copy of their resume, the scorecard for the job, and then the PDF that's attached to the video. As I go through this next section, you can follow along on the PDF, or I'll just tell them to you and you can write them down. These first 3 questions are the most hated by anybody who's not going to be a good fit at your company because it's going to expose the pretenders. On the flip side, it's going to allow you to connect deeply with those people that are going to be an amazing fit at your company. Question 1 is from age 0 to 18. Who are the people and what were the experiences that shaped who you are? Question 2, during that time, what were the ups and what were the downs of life? Question 3, when you graduated school, what did you plan to do and what did you end up doing? One of 3 things are going to happen when you ask these questions. 1 is they're going to shut down. They'll get super uncomfortable. They may not want to finish the interview. These are very personal questions. 2, they'll just give you super surface level answers. And 3, they'll open up and you'll be able to connect. In the first or second instance, they still may be a good candidate, but maybe just too shy to answer these questions. You can help them ease into them by answering 1 or 2 of these questions yourself and then re-asking the questions. If they can't get over themselves and give you a vulnerable answer and an authentic answer to these questions, they're not going to be a good cultural fit at your company. Move on. If you can connect with them, it's going to make the rest of the interview authentic and the answers that you're going to receive are going to be honest and genuine. Once they're now open after those first 3 questions, you're going to dive into their resume and you're going to follow the same pattern on every single job that they've had, starting with the earliest job. The reason that we go through the same questions every time is because we're looking for a pattern as we ask the same questions about each job that they've had up to this point. The parallel that I love to draw here is that in World War II, when the scouts were flying over enemy troops and heavy artillery, they would assign the person that was colorblind to look for enemy forces. The reason is that people that can see in color have way too many variables to take in that they can't see patterns. But as you put somebody that's colorblind in a position where they're looking for feedback and all they can see is shapes, they're going to be able to see the distinction between the tanks and the foliage that's supposed to be camouflaging it. So as we go through the same questions for each job, we'll start with the basics. Who is your employer? When did you start? When did you finish? What was your job description? I'm going to compare all of those answers to what they have written on the resume. About 50% of the time, there's a discrepancy between what they tell me verbally and what they have written on the resume. And that means either they're dishonest or they're negligent. Either way, you want to find out. So when you see inconsistencies, don't just brush over it. Ask a couple of follow-up questions to say, it looks like you started at this date, but you're telling me that you started this date. Tell me why. After you find out the basics about that job, you're going to go through a question asking pattern where you first ask about them, and then you ask about their boss, and then you ask what their boss would say about them. As you get to the end, their answers are going to become extremely authentic, and then you'll be able to draw parallels between what they said about themselves and what their boss is going to say about them when you talk to them. The first question in this section is, what were some of your successes and how did you achieve them? You then follow that up with the other side of the ledger. What were some of your failures and why did they happen? A follow-up question that I love to ask on the heels of what was your failure and why is, knowing what you know now, what would you do differently? The reason I love asking this question is because it's going to highlight learning and self-awareness. If you have somebody in your company that cannot learn, it's going to be very difficult for them to grow in an entrepreneurial setting. If you have somebody on your leadership team that is not self-aware, it will be a company killer. You cannot hire a partner or an executive member that does not have self-awareness. If they didn't learn anything or they give you the same answer for all of the different jobs that they had, it's likely telling you that they lack the self-awareness needed to excel in the role that you're hiring them for. After asking them those questions about themselves, you now ask them a few questions about their supervisor. And you start with these 2 questions. First, what was the supervisor's name? And second, can I contact them? The reason that question is so powerful is because when you ask, can I contact them, their eyes are either going to light up because they're stoked, or they're going to be super apprehensive. They're going to pause and say, well, why do you want to contact them? And that tells you so much, and you could dig into that. Also, after they know that you're going to contact their boss, their answers are going to be so much more authentic. After you know their boss's name and if you can contact them or not, you're going to ask what their boss's strengths and weaknesses are. As you hear these strengths and weaknesses, a couple of things have always held true. The things that people admire in other people are often traits that they themselves have or aspire to have. And the things that they dislike in other people are often things that they are struggling with themselves. The other thing that it's going to tell you is that if this person had boss after boss after boss that they just hated, had a bad relationship, didn't see their potential, never promoted them, always got on their case, it's probably the candidate's fault. If somebody's pointing fingers, it's way more valuable to examine the finger pointer than the person that they're pointing the finger at. After you've asked them to assess their boss, you then say, when I contact your supervisor, what are he or she going to say your greatest strengths and your greatest weaknesses are? This is where you get the gold, because they know you're going to call them up, and so they give you the most authentic answer. And you're able to draw parallels between what they're saying their boss would say their strengths and weaknesses are and what they said their own strengths and weaknesses were earlier on in the conversation. After you go through that assessment, you then ask, how would your prior boss rate your performance on a scale of 1 to 10? They're going to give you a very honest answer, especially if they feel like you're going to contact their boss. If their answer is anything less than a 9, ask them why and what they would have needed to do different to make it a 10. The last thing that you'll do before moving on to the next job and asking the same set of questions is ask them why they left that job. You're going to find out that on the resume, it says they had this job from this state to this state and another job from this state to this state. And there's often some underperformance, or they got fired, or they got promoted, or they couldn't get promoted, and you're going to find out some valuable information as you find out why they left. I want to insert a pro tip here. You're going to get to the end of this first job that they had, and you're going to see 3 or 4 additional jobs on their resume. And you're going to think, I already feel good about this person. I think I want to hire this person. I don't have time to go through the same question set for all of these other jobs that they had. It's a little bit awkward to ask the same questions anyways, and you're going to make a decision there. That would be a massive mistake. The success that comes in business comes in those tiny little moments where you just need to be a little bit more gritty and a little bit more disciplined to go through the entire process all the way through the end. What's going to happen is if you hire them then, you're going to decrease your hiring percentage, you're going to have worse players in your company, and you're going to move slower and not accomplish your goals. The very last step is the icing on the cake. It's the 3 questions that I always wrap up with to ensure 3 specific outcomes. What's your ideal next job? What's your long-term career plan? And what is your self-assessment? These 3 questions ensure 3 things. First, when you ask, what is your ideal next job? They're gonna highlight everything that they want from an employer and from a work situation. They're not only being interviewed by you, but you're being interviewed by them. And if there's a chance that they're not sold on your company and you really want this candidate, they've just laid out everything that they want in a job that you can then use to sell them on why they should work at your company. By asking them what their long-term career plan is, you're able to then see if they're gonna stay at your company for 6 months, 18 months, 3 years, or longer. You want a minimum of 3 years. It costs you so much money in time and in training efforts and in overhead and customer relationships to have someone at your company for less than 3 years. That should be your benchmark. And lastly, as you ask them to do this self-assessment, it gives them the opportunity to ask any follow-up questions to you and gives you the opportunity to dig into anything that you didn't quite resolve in prior questions in the interview process. If at any time through this entire interview process, if somebody is not the right candidate and you know you're not going to hire them, jump to the very last page, ask them to do a self-assessment, thank them for their time, and then let them go. It's not unkind. It's unkind to waste their time and inefficient to waste your time sitting there with them. So you can be efficient and you can be kind. Jump to the last page, ask them, and then invite them to leave. I have 2 short bonus items. The first is a rule that I never ever break because I've seen the catastrophe of breaking it, which is if they're not a hell yeah, then they are a no. Treat this person like you would a spouse. Somebody asks you, hey, how is your fiance? They're okay, they're fine. Instead of, oh man, I'm so stoked, you would not move forward with that relationship. If the person is a hell yeah, you're not gonna make a mishire. This takes a ton of discipline because sometimes your business is super busy and you feel like, I just need somebody to fill the seat. That is the wrong approach. That's what subpar and failure entrepreneurs do. If you want your team to be successful, it has to be a hell yeah. Before I give you the second bonus item, like and subscribe for more content so you can build your team and focus on the exact things that you love. The second bonus item is the only question that you need to ask the references of this candidate. Knowing what you know about this person, would you hire them again if you had the chance? Thanks for watching.